Welcome back to Deck Check. My name is Ganesh. cEDH is a beautiful format with a huge variety of competitive strategies and commanders. But if that's the case, then why isn't every legendary creature a good cEDH commander? Let's take a look at the 10 reasons we choose commanders to lead our deck. So first up, we have color identity and the partner mechanic. So Bruce Tarl and Thrasios is a partner deck, and Bruce is really only in the deck because he has red and white color identity, which allows you to play Dockside and Emil and other powerful cards in those colors. Cody is a 5-color turbo deck. As you can see in his activated ability here, he lets you put any sort of card you want in your deck and with any color because that is Wooburg right there. Silas Wren is similar to Bruce Tarl. He sees play in a deck called Rogsai, him and Rograk, and he's really just there not because he has any relevant abilities, but more just to give the deck a Dimir color identity and let you play tutors and counterspells in blue and black. Next up, we have card advantage. Some of the most powerful commanders in cEDH are partners that give you card advantage, like all these three on the screen. Tymna can let you drop to 3 cards a turn. Thrasios lets you draw as many as you want, as long as you have 4 mana for it each time. And Teverstot lets you draw 2 or 3, depending on whether you sacrifice a creature or you sacrifice a commander. Tymna is a little bit more combat focused, so she can be mainly better in the early and the mid game, but the other two seem to be good at all stages in the game. Next up, we have mana advantage. So these 3 will be commanders that give you some form of mana. So for example, Malcolm, when he deals combat damage or another pirate, he will get you a treasure. Kirik will let us pay life instead of mana for our mana cost, which is very powerful and makes this deck a very fast combo deck. And Urza lets us tap all of our artifacts for mana regardless of what they are, which is an extremely powerful ability, especially considering in cEDH there are a lot of artifacts that cost 0, so he can ramp out mana very quickly. Next up, we have board presence and life loss. Slicer is a perfect example of this. This is going to be a red stacks deck that seeks to just slow down the game and get out Slicer, and then Slicer will have just a bunch of damage coming in at all of the opponents, and it can't attack its owner if it's goaded. Yuriko is a little similar, but this is more of a tempo control deck, not a stacks deck, and she can deal a bunch of damage, make people lose a lot of life with her top deck manipulation. The deck runs things like Scion of Draco, and if a ninja trigger happens to hit one of those, everyone at the table is going to lose a bunch of life, and a lot of times this will just kill people. Anoda is similar in that she cheats out large humans, or she at least tries to. She's going to stacks out the game and just get absolutely huge beaters and make it so no one else can win with the stacks effect, and then just kill people with combat damage. Next up, we have combo potential. This is pretty important. So for example, in Anala, she doesn't exactly have any sort of combo with her specifically, but she makes it so you can have copies of all your wizards, whether they're on the board or not, it doesn't matter. So one good example of this, and probably the centerpiece of the deck, is Spellseeker. So if you get a Spellseeker and you pay 1 extra mana, you can copy it, and there are instants and sorceries you can search out and kind of chain together to just win the game right there. Godo lets you go search for equipment and just cheat it right onto the battlefield. Most of the time this is going to be Helm of the Host, which is an infinite with Godo. If you equip it to him, you will get infinite combat steps. Magda goes infinite with a card called Clock of Omens, and if you are able to make a dwarf artifact or turn Magda into an artifact since she's a dwarf, you'll get infinite treasures, and from there you can go search out different artifacts and dragons and things and just win the game. Next up is flexibility. This is a very underrated stat, in my opinion. So Kenrith is an extremely flexible commander. He has 5 different abilities, all of which are relevant sometimes or the other. You can put counters on things, so you can turn what people think would be safe blocks into unsafe blocks. You can gain life, you can give things haste, and you can even give other people's creatures haste and trample to maybe kill a pesky planeswalker sort of thing. You can draw cards, and you can even reanimate creatures, which is probably his most powerful ability, and of course the one that costs the most mana. Next up is Roko and Sisay. They both have a sort of similar effect, but Sisay is probably a little better because she can do it at instant speed. Roko will let you search for any creature X or less, and Sisay will only let you tutor out legendary permanents. But both of these abilities can be very powerful because if someone is trying to win or generate some large form of advantage, you can go and find a hate piece that just stops them. So, for example, someone's got a lot of artifacts out, you can tutor with the Roko a collector and just turn them all off. So next up we have stacks effects. These have definitely fallen a lot out of favor in the meta. However, it's still a consideration. So if you run Grand Arbiter as your commander, it's very annoying for your opponents because everything they play is going to cost one more. That doesn't sound too bad until you kind of factor in how many spells you actually need to cast in cEDH to play the game. Like just playing your mana rocks and things, making them all cost one more can be very backbreaking. Braids is a different type of stacks in that she kind of gives you a choice. However, if you don't sacrifice things as she asks you to, Braids is just going to run away with card advantage and probably win the game. So, very punishing commander there. Urza does not have any specific stacks abilities, however, he pairs very, very well with stacks cards. So, for example, Winter Orb only works if it's untapped. So what Urza can do is wait till the end step of the player that goes before him and then just tap it for mana, and all of a sudden he's the only person that gets to untap his lands and no one else can. So it can be very, very backbreaking. Next up we have infinite outlets. So for example with Shorkai, if you have Isochron, Scepter, and Dramatic Reversal and infinite mana, you can untap him as many times as you choose, and with him you can just draw through your deck until you find whatever you need to win. Jessica works differently. If you have infinite mana, you can cast her and then -X, where X is her loyalty, and you can deal damage to your opponent's faces, their life total, and then you can recast her again because you have infinite mana after she dies, and just keep doing that until everyone on the table is dead. Thrasios is simple. You just pay 4 mana, you scry 1, and if it's land, you put it on, or you draw a card. So if you have infinite mana, you do that as many times as you want. Next up, we have value. This is a bit of a more arcane concept, but it still matters. So time doesn't exactly give you mana, it doesn't exactly draw you cards. However, it does provide you with value. So it can mill you and then reanimate a small thing, whatever you want though. So a lot of times these can be very impactful cards like, say, Ranger Captain, and they can crack it repeatedly, or some sort of combo piece. So it doesn't exactly give you cards of mana, but that doesn't mean it doesn't help you a lot in the game. Obnixilus's ability is also good. He exiles a top card and you can play it, which is very similar to a draw effect, but it's not exactly a draw. Next up we have Kinnan, and he has 2 good abilities, one of them being mana advantage, but the other one being a value ability where you can pay 7 mana and just put a non-human onto the battlefield. This can be a very, very powerful ability depending on what's on the top of your deck, but a lot of times they will just have giant creatures and they can't really be countered or interact with besides being killed. So it can be very, very hard to deal with, like a Consecrated Sphinx and a Nezahal and all sorts of things. So very powerful value commander. Lastly, we have board control. Now, I'm not going to say board control is the main reason we play these commanders, however, it is impactful. With Jessica, you can downtick her and you can kill up to 3 things, which is actually super good. 1 card, basically almost half a card because she's your commander, you can get her out later, to kill 3 things on the board is a very, very powerful ability, even though it doesn't seem so at first glance. Kenrith also sort of controls the board, although to a much less degree than these other 2, in that you can put +1/+1 counters on anyone's creatures, not just your own, and you can give other things trample and haste, so you can mess with combat a little bit. And Tevish Zod has his ult. I know this doesn't come into play too often, but if it does, more than likely no one else is winning that game. So if he takes everybody's commanders, good luck winning if you're Tibet or something like that. And that'll do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the Discord linked below. And also a huge thank you to my first patron, JR. I'll see you later.